Yeah, born and raised, and I've been to London and came back, have been to Kilkenny and came back, have been to Dublin and came back, have been to West Cork and came back. So at the moment I'm training to become a forest school leader, which is about setting a school up outside in the forest or a place of nature. And I think it's important because it's the way I grew up, kind of 2 steps behind my dad and my neighbours, and always kind of learning outside and what to do and knots and these kind of things. So again, I think we've advanced so much with technology and communications, and it's fantastic for the young people, but they need to somehow marry that with the old traditions of how, because there's such a worry now about climate change and extinction, and there's a huge debate of where it's coming from, or is it real or whatever. But if it does happen, we need to very quickly be able to go back and learn the ways of survival and kind of a resilience. So that's what I really hope to do, is marry what I've learned from the past but teach it in the future.
Work in Portmagee school?
Yep. So I work in Portmagee school then every Monday morning, and it started off because they had some flower beds that were kind of sitting there. So we started working on that and planting, and then what we did was we planted potatoes and cabbage and onions, and very simple, because what I found was, looking at other places, they were setting kind of vegetables that the children wouldn't eat, or kind of not natural to them. So we set a load of vegetables, and then when they were done, when they were ready, we harvested them and took them to the social services, and they were cooked and given out to the old people for Meals on Wheels. So there was a real kind of circular economy going on. And now we've started a compost heap. But we also started then kind of trying to start an encyclopedia, and it's getting better and better, where each child would pick a native tree, research it, draw it up, put it in there. Mammals, we've done the same. Plants, we're building birds, we're building out now into other things, insects now for next year. But then along the way, if a child sees an animal, a tree, or a sighting, an otter, they'll come in and kind of write that in. We've seen an otter, we've seen this, we've seen that. So it's building up, and we did a play then based on nature, and we did some basket weaving. So there's lots of different things, but they're all tied into kind of a biodiversity theme.
Yeah.
I suppose as a child I had asthma. And there was always kind of the thing about goat's milk, and my dad would be picking up bits of goats, from the want of a better word, a goat with one pap and a goat that wasn't milking and would milking. But eventually he got a really good goat, and I used to drink the milk every day. Now, whether I was growing up or whatever, but the asthma did leave. And I suppose so I always had a hankering over goats, and I always wanted to have goats and rear them properly, because my dad was he was great, but he loved horses. Horses were his big passion. So, and I don't know, people have a strange relationship with goats as well. They see them kind of as a thing of poverty or something like that. There's or something of the devil as well. Christianity has, like when you have Puck, one of the oldest Celtic festivals going. And there's Sean O'Connell, then your man out in Kilreelig. He is one of the stories that, one of his stories is that God was making the animals, and the devil's son, I think the devil's son was looking to make an animal, and he was pestering God, could he make some sort of an animal anyway. So God gave him a few spare bits that were left over from making all the other animals, and your man came up with the goat, and that's how goats were made, according to Sean O'Connell. So yeah, I've had them before, and so this time I'm really trying to do it professionally and properly, and get a herd number, and they're all tagged, and get a good breed and milking. Milking one pap.
Yeah.
Then the other, I'd say the machine was just too strong. this time of year it would all be the hay, working in the hay, and there'd be 2 or 3 families working in it together. And I suppose growing up, I'd have grown up in the 70s, so we'd have a tractor cut it, but from there on in it would be the horses and the tosser gatherers and bringing it all together and making the winds of hay then. And you'd have to be, as all the kids, all the children would be inside trampling down the hay and keeping it firm and stuff like that. And the oats, I think the oats was a very special time of year when everybody would come together, because we had a mowing machine. So the horse would go along, my dad would sit on the mowing machine, but my neighbour here, Jackie Kennedy, would be behind with the rake, and he would gather the oats and they'd be left in the field. And then the women and children would come along and tie them into sheaves of oats and tying them, and you'd learn then how to tie them. And then they'd be put into rooks. So there'd be 3 or 4 standing in the field, and then later on they'd all be brought up. And I remember it was in the autumn, God, it was 1979 when the Pope John Paul, the day Pope John Paul came, Dad showed me how to make a circle in the ground with a pike, and you tied the sugan around the pike, and then we had the stones measuring out the circle. And that was, again, because I do a lot of work with foreign students up here in the field, and that's the kind of thing I'm teaching them, how to make sugans, how to make ropes out of grass, how to make circles, how to put in things, and they try and make something, then try and build something. And it's very successful because, again, these children are from Moscow, from Barcelona, from Genoa, who have no idea of Irish culture or any kind of like rural culture. They're real citified children, and they're having a fantastic time up there. My dad's story, anyway, is about a man called Darby Murphy. And Darby Murphy, like myself, out early in the morning bringing the animals to go milking cows. He was bringing the cows, and there was a wheel, the wheel of a horse car, going down the field. So he cut the wheel and he stopped it and he laid it down and he brought in the cow's milk. Didn't think any more of the horse wheel coming down. And weeks later he was headed to Cork on the butter road to sell butter. And he went up, sold the butter, and I think it was on his way back late at night. He heard people coming towards him. And then he heard a voice inside the ditch saying, "Darby Murphy, come in and light your pipe." And he kept going, and the voices were getting closer. And he heard the voice again saying, "Darby Murphy, take your ease, come in and light your pipe." And again, he didn't take any notice, and the voices were getting closer. And it was, "Darby Murphy, if you value your life, come in and light your pipe." So he parked up the horse, went in the gap, and sat down and started lighting his pipe. And there was this man waiting for him inside. And he said, "Don't say a word now till the people pass." So all those voices passed. And later on, the strange man told Darby that that was a fairy funeral. And if they caught him out on the road, they'd have taken him with him. And he was a man that was cursed by the fairies. He was the wheel that was travelling around. And Darby Murphy broke the curse when he stopped the wheel. So he looked after him then. And that was Dad's story, written in 1930, whatever. So we're down here again, as I said, in Aumbui. And my grandmother, Nora Grantfield, Nanog they called her. Nanog, her grandfather and her uncle. So there was a father and son. I think they were both called Richard. Richard seems to be a family name in Grantfield. And so the young man died, the son died, but before he died, the father sent for the priest. And there was something about the priest was going to eat his dinner and come down later, or something like that anyway. And the son died in the meantime. And when the priest came down, the father said, "You didn't come when you weren't called, and you're not called now." So there could be something else going on in there. Myself and my cousin are figuring that out. But that's the story. So my grandmother's uncle was buried without a priest, and his father as well was buried without a priest. And my dad was very proud of that.
And I got a bridge, yeah.
There's so we're here in Ahomboy at the moment, which is Aumbui, the Yellow River, and it's supposed to be the water coming down from the mountain, and the bog and everything is yellow, the water in the river. And then you have Imlach Peishte is the next townland, and that can be either seen as the field of the children, Páiste, or Peishte, the worm, which can also be seen as a serpent or a monster as well. And actually, my dad, there was a place up on the other side here, Paulna Peishte, which was this big watery bog, and it was said that if horses went in there, they'd be lost forever, and anything that went missing, they'd be all worried about Paulna Peishte. And so there was this man anyway who had no fear of all the suspicion or the superstitions and stuff. So he started to drain Paulna Peishte, and 'twas only about 2 feet deep, and 'twas nearly gone down to the end of the world. But on the other side we've Anagar Bridge, and again we've Owenbui, and this is Owengara, and people think it's short river. Gar is short in Irish, but it's actually a different story. It's a story about 2 men that came to work in Portmagee in the king of Rincaharroch to build his castle. And these men, whatever castle they built, was always the best castle in Ireland. So this fella in Rincaharroch wasn't very happy about the idea that his castle would be good for a while, but then the castle after that would be better than his, and the castle after that would even be better again. So he planned on killing the 2 brothers anyway. But there was a girl working in the castle that knew the 2 lads, so she told them the plan. So they killed the king anyway. And they were all very worried about that they'd be seized and they'd be attacked and everything like that. But his subjects hated the king as well. His own subjects hated him. So the people were so delighted that they killed the king, they put him up on their 2 shoulders and they shouldered him over, and they were laughing all the way to where Anagar Bridge is. So it's Owengara, the bridge of laughter. And they had a great time, and they dropped him there at Owengara.